You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. What has two thumbs and doesn't give a crap about nanites? Hi, Bob Kelso. Nice to meet you.
And I'm Ari, and I'm afraid I have no time to answer 1 million questions. I have a mission to accomplish.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Evolution and the Ensigns of Command. But one beautiful thing that just happened to welcome us back from our break is that Fox News published an article titled Star Trek Writers Take Starship Enterprise Where It's Never Gone Before. Woke Politics.
So I have not read this article yet. I just saw my friend took a screenshot of the article and posted it on his stories on Insta or whatever and was like LMAO with like 12 O's or whatever.
It is the funniest thing. I've only seen people reacting to just the headline itself, but I read it and it's even funnier. So I figured, let's go ahead and read it before we get into our episodes.
I think so.
The first thing I noticed is that it is an opinion piece by David Marcus, which is the name of Kirk's son from the movies.
Oh.
Now, that's a coincidence. This is a real guy named David Marcus. That's his real name. He didn't pick that pseudonym so that he could get more Star Trek credit. He just happens to be named after Kirk. He just happens to have the same name as Kirk's son.
That's so weird. Maybe that's why he chose Kirk as the picture for the, because I was like, what a weird person to choose.
Kirk is Star Trek. That's
yeah,
fine.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. There is no more quintessential American story universe than Star Trek. Since its creation in 1966, the franchise has had myriad iterations on big screen and small, basically invented the sci-fi convention, and has charmed audiences across every generation. But in 2 recent episodes, writers crossed a line where no Star Trek has gone before. That is to say, they got directly involved in partisan politics. Are you kidding me? This is the first time they've gotten involved in partisan... Okay, let's let him set his case. The first blatant example of electioneering on Star Trek Discovery was a cameo by current and former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams as none other than the president of Federation of Planets. Ooh, wrong. No, she was the president of Earth. The president of the Federation was a human Cardassian-Bajoran hybrid. So,
interesting.
Got that wrong.
So they're wrong. Yeah.
The second was a weird plot twist in the pilot of new show Strange New Worlds, in which the 2020 Capitol riot is depicted and blamed for starting a second American Civil War and the destruction of the planet. To put it more succinctly, Orange Man bad. So I'm curious, David Marcus, are you in favor of January 6th? Are you?
That's what he seems to be saying here.
Or to put it another way, do you think Trump is responsible for January 6th?
Also, it was the 2021 Capitol riot, wasn't it?
Yes,
you were correct. Elected in. So this guy now has like 2 or 3 factual inconsistencies, and we're in the introduction still. There
are 2 factual inaccuracies just in that paragraph.
I watched Strange New Worlds, but it was a few weeks ago. Did they really say that the January 6th insurrection?
Yes, actually.
Okay. I can't remember it at this point. You know, I'm really bad with memorizing things.
When Pike beams into their little summit, he shows a montage of things leading up to World War II, and one of them shows the Capitol riots with the guillotine.
That's right. Okay.
Or not the guillotine, but the gallows that they had erected for Mike Pence.
Right.
So, it was very, very clear. So, he's not wrong that Star Trek is being political here. But, okay, here we go. To be fair, since the original 1960s series, Star Trek has always delved into cultural and societal issues. It has always been credited with diverse casts, with tackling issues like saving the whales, remember that?
Everyone remembers that.
And with reflecting American and global foreign policy. What? I mean, no, he's actually true. Yeah. That's fair. Okay. Yeah. All of that should live long and prosper. But these 2 recent incidents go a good deal farther. This isn't issue advocacy, it's pure partisan politics.
And then there's the worst picture of William Shatner I've ever seen.
Oh, God, yeah, no, it's like he's got a cold sore on his mouth. What is that?
That is a terrible picture.
So,
like it's like he was in a fight and he's drunk or something. Anyway.
This is part of a broader galaxy of problems, as we saw recently with Disney, which owns Star Wars, going to battle with Florida Governor Rod DeSantis. It says Rod DeSantis, not Ron DeSantis.
It sure does.
Which I should say Disney didn't. Like, Disney was supporting basically every single Republican politician in Florida, and then they just decided, okay, we're going to stop supporting any politicians in Florida altogether as a way to wash their hands of it. And that's when the Republicans freaked out.
They tried to be less political, and the Republicans were like, oh no.
Yeah. The central confusion here is the difference between showing broad support for things like basic civil rights and openly advocating for one political party's answers for securing them. Well, here's the problem, David. The Republicans aren't advocating for basic civil rights. They're advocating to erode them. There is only one party that makes any kind of advocacy for civil rights, and I do think that the Democrats fucking suck at it, but they're the only fucking option.
Yep.
So, for example, almost everyone supports voting rights, but that isn't the same as
supporting... Why is that in quotes? He says, so for example, almost everyone supports voting rights, but that isn't the same as supporting Stacey Abrams. Why did he put voting rights in quotes?
Well, because he doesn't support people's right to vote.
Right, yeah. Anyway.
Almost everyone condemns the Capitol riot and political violence. I'm pretty sure Ted Cruz got mega canceled by the Republicans for condemning the Capitol riot, but okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure too.
But that's not the same, and placing unique blame on one single event from one side of the spectrum. Okay, well, which side of the spectrum did the Capitol riot?
And wasn't that a montage of things that caused the World War III or whatever? It was like one thing that happened that caused it. The episode didn't say that it was a single event from one side of the spectrum.
And I gotta say, that episode, Pike's speech about how the Second Civil War came about, he was not blaming one side. He said it was everyone's inability to communicate with each other instead of fighting.
Right.
The way he said it, it was a very liberal, very, why can't we all just sing Kumbaya kind of a analysis of the situation. So because it happened to show the Capitol riot, which if there does happen to be a civil war, that's going to be chapter 1 in the history books of it. Come on.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. This article is something.
Ultimately, the problem here is that this kind of political signaling is alienating for those fans who are not part of the Democrat Party political tribe. As a fan myself, it hasn't made me turn off the shows, but it's jarring and also breaks the narrative spell of fantasy and science fiction, which is why people tune in the first place. Dude. Star Trek has always said that the 21st century was when humanity completely f***ed themselves, and we're in the 21st century right now, and things are pretty bad. It makes sense that Star Trek would be talking about that. Not just in Strange New Worlds, but Star Trek Picard this season took place in 2024 and called out ICE directly for its racism. Star Trek has always done this. It's always said things are going to get worse before they get better. And when things are getting worse in real life and Star Trek is supposed to be our future, it makes sense that they would adjust it.
Yeah.
It feels very much like the writers and creators of the new line of Star Trek shows, which also includes Picard, don't think just writing a good TV show is important enough work. Like so much of corporate America, they think they have to save the country and the planet while they do it. Leave the planet saving for the fictional Starship Enterprise. What does that mean? The
whole point of saving the whales was to bring awareness. The whole point of these things is to bring it into our lives. It's not to watch them fix it on screen while we watch all the whales die and the ice caps melt. That's the point, is to bring it to our attention.
I care more about the real world than I do about Star Trek. And in Star Trek 4, humpback whales had gone extinct by that time. And then they made that movie. And I'm not saying that Star Trek saved the whales, but it was part of that movement. And now humpback whales are no longer an endangered species.
Right. Because it impacted the real world. Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big Star Trek fan, but I'm not so big a Star Trek fan that I want World War III to happen.
Right. No one wants World War III to happen except for the people writing articles like this.
The irony is that all 3 new Star Trek live-action shows are quite progressive in the diversity of their casting, and despite hysterical concerns about a backlash that never actually happens, everyone is on board as long as the story and the acting are good. Bullshit, dude. I have seen so many people complain every single time any TV show, any movie casts a woman or a black man. I have seen Fandom Menace YouTube channels that when Captain Marvel came out, they made 100 videos about Brie Larson, literally 100 videos. I have seen people complain all over the place about how Star Trek is too woke now, when, like, no, there was an episode of the original series in the 60s that got banned from Alabama because Kirk kissed Uhura. And that was the first scripted interracial kiss on national television. And Alabama was like, oh, that's too political for us. Like, this isn't something new, dude.
It's not at all. It's so weird. How old is this person? Like 4?
I think he's like 49. I looked him up.
Jeez. Okay.
Artists can, always have, and should use their work to hold a mirror up to their culture and society, even to advocate for broad agenda items. What they shouldn't do is beam the equivalent of a 30-second Democrat Party political ad into the middle of a space adventure. Now, here, I'm going to give him a little teeny bit of credit. I did think bringing Stacey Abrams onto the show was a little bit cringe, but seeing Ted Cruz freak out about it made it worth it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt about it. Well, I don't watch Discovery yet because I'm saving it. But when I get there, I assume it'll be kind of cringy based on what I've heard.
It's like, okay, yeah. Actually, when I first saw it, because I didn't know what Stacey Abrams looked like. I didn't even realize that's what happened until people freaked out later.
Oh, and isn't it the same as having like the lady who had been in space come on Star Trek, the first woman in space or whatever? Isn't it kind of the same thing, though?
No, I disagree. Mae Jemison, because she's an astronaut, that is an apolitical position. Stacey Abrams is explicitly a political actor. And, like, you know, just because she is probably one of the people like most strongly credited with turning Georgia blue in the last election.
Yeah.
She did a lot of the groundwork in the push for getting Warnock and Ossoff elected to the Senate in the runoffs. So, like, you know, she's a very strong Democratic operative. So that is explicitly partisan politics. So, but anyway, I said it was cringe. Doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. Have they ever had any other political people on any of the shows? I know they've had a lot of guest stars here and there, but have there ever been any other politicians?
They had the King of Jordan in an episode, but that's because he's a Star Trek fan. Stacey Abrams is also a Star Trek fan, but I can't really think explicitly. They've had people visit behind the scenes. Like later this season, Wesley gets promoted from acting ensign to full ensign. And when they did that, Gene Roddenberry actually made a ceremony of it behind the scenes where he gave Wesley his Army Air Force second lieutenant insignia, because that's the equivalent from the Army Air Force to an ensign in the Navy. And they actually invited the current Joint Chief, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who was Colin Powell.
Oh.
So he was there to watch Will Wheaton get Gene Roddenberry's bars.
That's interesting.
There's stuff like that. But in front of the camera, can't think of many specifically political operatives.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah.
We got 2 more paragraphs. So here we go. Perhaps what America lacks more than anything today is a shared set of strong stories that help explain our world. Even our entertainment is awash in bitter partisanship. It leaves Americans too few places to ponder their lives and communities outside the context of red versus blue.
Some of us don't make everything about red versus blue, though. Some of us just make it about views, you know?
Star Trek is one of a small handful of entertainment brands with the popularity, scope, and reach to be that shared story. But to do so, its creators must choose that universality over scoring cheap, predictable, and partisan political points. Dude, Star Trek is a communist future. There's an episode of Deep Space Nine where they literally quote Karl Marx. What are you talking about?
Money doesn't exist. I know. I think my favorite part of this entire article is at the bottom. It says, David Marcus is a columnist living in New York City and the author of Charade, The COVID Lies That Crushed the Nation.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, I figured, you know, people were laughing at the the headline, but, there's plenty to laugh at in the article itself, too, especially spelling Ron DeSantis' name wrong. Like,
I know. Isn't that their, God at this point? Yeah.
at time of recording, this was published May 14th. It's May 17th. This has been up for 3 days and nobody's caught that typo.
Or bothered to fix it. Yeah.
Which also tells you how few people actually read articles.
True. Especially on Fox News. Yeah. All right. So today we're going to talk about Evolution. It's the first episode of season 3. I'm very excited. It first aired on the 25th of September, 1989. The teleplay was by Michael Piller. The story was by Michael Piller and Michael Wagner. And it was directed by Winrich Colby.
So I would like to make a motion that we don't call him Dr. Paul Stubbs for the rest of us talking
Dr.
about this
Bob
episode.
Kelso.
He's just Dr. Kelso.
Yes. He's in my notes as Dr. Kelso.
Yeah, it's so hard to see him as any other character. I love Scrubs. I've seen every season of Scrubs except for the last season, which doesn't count because it was supposed to be a spin-off anyway.
I've seen it and it's awful.
I watched 2 episodes and I said, that's a spin-off I don't need to see. Anyway, so he is aboard the Enterprise because they are studying there's a binary star system where one star is collecting material from the other star, and every 196 years, like clockwork, it explodes, and it's 18 hours away. So he's been preparing for 20 years to study it.
Yes.
And Wesley has been doing a school project where he's working on nanites and seeing how they might interact with each other to increase their computing power, but he fell asleep while studying them and they got loose.
He also has grown into a grown-ass man in the last 4 months since the last episode came out. His face and stuff had changed a lot. I just wanted to point that out.
Also, his mom's back.
I know. I was
and she's
so
got
happy.
This really cute curly bob haircut, and she's I missed there was a line, she's like, I missed about 2 inches of him.
I know. As a mom, I was like, oh.
That's kind of a nice I want to say a C plot running through it is just her, because she's missed so much of him growing up, and she talks to Picard about how is he? Has he ever fallen in love? Which he has, but I don't think Picard watched that episode, so he can't even bring that up. But she's just I don't know. He just seems like he's so serious all the time, and he's a boy. He's 17 years old. He should be getting in trouble and falling in love and, doing all this stuff. But he just seems so serious and focused on his studies.
Well, here he created an entire species, Bev.
He creates a new life. The nanites get loose, and apparently the material that they use to reproduce themselves is in abundance in the computer core. So that's where they get stuck. They don't realize that the nanites are loose at first. They just notice that all the ship systems are going haywire, and they're like, oh no, something's wrong. We're about to fall into the star. They keep having to reboot systems. They keep having troubleshoot. Meanwhile, Wesley hasn't told anyone about this. He's just kind of panicking oh God, what do I do? He goes into 10 forward to set traps for the nanites, and Guinan catches him there.
Little mouse traps, I know, yeah.
They're little mouse traps, and I'm just dude, they're nanites. You should probably do something more than that.
More than just these mouse traps, yeah, I know.
Guinan, hears him out and compares him to Dr. Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Which, he's like, okay. And then he eventually goes and tells his mom. They hold a conference. And Kelso is just well, I don't care about these nanites. They're not intelligent. That's impossible. Let's just destroy them and be done with it because I've got important research to be done. Yep. And it's also interesting because Kelso kind of takes a liking to Wesley. And Wesley is kind of the architect of ruining his life's work.
I know. I caught that too. The duplicity of that, because he was like, oh, do you know what a wonderkind is? And I was like, oh, are we going to remember that Wesley's special this season after last season? And then he wanted to rope him into being like him. And then I was like, I think I wrote in my notes. Okay, so this is where I admit I left my notes at work. But I wrote in my notes something I bet he's going to screw something up here and blame it on Wesley. But in the end, it ended up being Wesley.
And there was actually, as soon as he leaves that briefing, Deanna uses her powers of deduction in the most obvious way, where she says, his nonchalance is studied and practiced. And then Picard goes, even I could tell that, which is yeah, thank you. You're so useless, Deanna.
I know, and when they write those lines in after she does her bit, like, I'm always like, does the writers want to undermine Deanna? Like, they could make her so powerful, but they like to oh yeah, we know Deanna. But we get that really good line of turn your beam off into my soul, or whatever it is he said. That was so funny.
They're studying the nanites in the computer core, and they're trying to like get them off with like low level gamma bursts or something. And then Kelso is like, well, a high gamma burst would do better. Like, well, that would kill them. He's like, I know. And then he like has programmed a phaser to shoot gamma burst, and like he just shoots it at the computer core.
Yeah, I know. I was so pissed off. I was like, what the I was just like, because why didn't they arrest him at that point? Not only did he kill the nanites, he destroyed Federation property. Shouldn't he be in a brig somewhere?
Yeah, he why is he issued a phaser to begin with? He's not an officer. He's not in Starfleet. He should not be carrying a weapon on an ostensibly military vessel when he's a civilian attaché. Now, he is a high-ranking Federation official, but that doesn't mean you get to just carry a gun on the ship.
Yeah, and as soon as he shot it at their computer, he should have been taken away to a cell. But that's just my opinion.
Once he does that, things escalate because the nanites are like, oh no, the humans have attacked us. And so like they start trying to poison everyone on the bridge. They change the environmental controls and stuff, and they're like, oh god, okay, things have escalated rapidly here, and we got to find a way to, either communicate with them or deal with them. And Data is like, well, I think I might be able to find a way to communicate with them. And like Picard is just about ready to be like, okay, no, let's just flood the ship with gamma radiation to kill them, when Data is finally able to make contact with them, and he decides to serve as a conduit. He has them enter into him and take over him so that he can be an avatar for them. And it turns out, it was all just a misunderstanding. They didn't realize what they were doing was harming the ship.
Yeah.
And Kelso honestly gets off pretty easy for having murdered a bunch of them when he knew that's what he was doing. Because it's not like the nanites had the benefit of ignorance. They were freshly intelligent. They didn't realize what they were doing was harming everyone else.
But Kelso deliberately murdered them. Yeah.
At that point, he knew, he had been told that these are potentially intelligent creatures, and he said, I don't care, and he shot them. He puts himself at their mercy, and they're, they forgive him, which is good of them, I guess. Is a very big of them. And the ship, the Enterprise computer is back up and running, and they're able to launch his little egg thing that he uses to study the experiment. So all's well that ends well. Because that's
what he calls it, right? Is the egg.
The egg.
And so because he called it the egg, and when they shot it into the star, I thought something was gonna come out of it. I don't know, like a new star. I don't know what I thought was gonna happen, but because it was called an egg, I thought something else was gonna happen.
I think it was just because it was like egg shaped.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why they called it that.
So I think one of my favorite parts of this entire episode was Kelso's bridge roll. Like, he was so dedicated to that bridge roll. That man threw himself across the room. Yeah. I was like...
I would say, in contrast to that, when he's like lying in his quarters and then the nanites like go and shoot a lightning bolt at him, that acting is the worst.
It was so bad. Was it when he was visualizing statistics? Because boy, do I have an opinion on that.
He was just playing like an MLB game in his head. He's just reading off the statistics, and then he gets lightning shocked, and like an arm shoots up in the air. He like stands up and like raises his arms out, and then like the security guard outside his quarters opens it, and he just like kind of is standing at the door, and then he falls into the guy's arms. None of it looked realistic. Like, obviously, and I think the actor had said, he's like, oh, I have no idea anything what I was saying on that show. I'm not a science fiction fan, so I didn't understand anything, and I'm just reading the lines here.
That's really how it came off in a couple places too. Like he understood the human parts, like when he was talking to Wesley and that kind of stuff. But I could tell that he was a little bit out of his element. But maybe I felt that way because I know that actor so well. I mean, 9 seasons of Scrubs, and I've watched it it at least 2 or 3 times. Like, I've seen that guy act so much. So I think that might have had something to do with it, that I was like being super nitpicky, but he was such a Bob Kelso. I didn't realize that man was just playing himself, like when he was on Scrubs. But yeah, that was really bad. And I'm really mad about the conversation about statistics, because like Wesley's like, oh, do you replay them in the holodeck? Which makes sense to a normal human being. And this guy's like, no, I just listen to I think about the statistics and it's even better than a holodeck. No, it's not. You can't even, that doesn't even tell you like who was swinging and who, you know, like, or well, it tells you who was swinging, but it doesn't give you like weather. I guess maybe you know that as part of baseball statistics, or like who was there or what the crowd was like or what the tension was like. And that's the part that's fun about sports. It's not the statistics.
You don't get the burp, 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 burp,
yeah.
burp, 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 burp,
you don't get peanuts.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my TA at my job, he went to the Mariners game last week, and he so he wasn't at school, and it was part of like school. It was a field trip, but he comes in the next day and I was like, hey, how was the game? And he is like, so boring. I'm never going to a baseball game again.
See, that's interesting because that's brought up in this show because Kelso brings up baseball to Wesley, and Wesley's like, yeah, my dad taught me when I was little. It's like, yeah, see, used to be the pastime of the Americas, but it was forgotten by a society that liked fast food and faster games. And
what in the heck makes him think that because we like fast food, we won't watch baseball?
Baseball kind of is like passe, though. Like, most people care more about football.
That's true.
I mean, like I'll go to a baseball game, and half of that experience is just hanging out with friends.
Yeah, I won't watch baseball on TV, but I'll go to. No, I almost said the Kingdom.
That's a little. I think unless you're time traveling about 22 years, I don't think you can get to the Kingdom.
So this was another species that meets humans and immediately insults us. I appreciated that consistency.
Yeah,
we weren't ugly bags of mostly water, but we were strange-looking creatures. So I appreciated that a lot, actually. And then. Oh, Guinan has 1 million kids. Not 1 million, but you know what I mean?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she said she had a lot of kids, and she never had problems with any of them except one who refused to listen. And then Beverly's like, well, that's normal. And she's like, no, not for a species of listeners.
Right. Yeah. And then we get that cute moment where Wes comes in and there's a bunch of younger kids. And then Beverly's like, oh, my God, he's with a girl. Oh, my God, he has friends, which is the thing every mom does. And then he's like, oh, my God, he's with a girl.
Who is she?
Yeah. It was so perfect. Bev plays her, or Gates McFadden plays her so good. I was so happy to see her back. I mean, I'm sure you knew that was coming, though, you know, because I loved her character and I was sad to see her go.
And I think they played it very well of addressing that she's been gone for a year and tying it in because it's a Wesley focused episode, but they're like, well, it's her first episode back. Let's give her a little to do and, you know, tie it in with Wesley.
Yeah, and I thought they did a good job with it. Like, okay, I was gone for a year. I mean, the one question that came up when she was asking all those questions about Wesley was, you left your 16-year-old and you didn't have anybody that checked in with you occasionally to tell you how he was doing? Did you not Zoom with him? I mean, like,
I'm sure she did, but like, there's a difference between Zooming with someone and seeing someone in person. Like, you're not going to see the height change. And, you know, trying to get information out of a teenager on a phone
teenage
call.
Boy on the phone. Yes, yeah. I know. Yeah, that's true. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the Ensigns of Command. It is the second episode of the 3rd season. It aired on the 2nd of October, 1989. It was written by Melinda M. Snodgrass, directed by Cliff Bowl, and I don't understand the title.
So the title of this episode is from the poem The Wants of Man by John Quincy Adams. One of our presidents.
Oh, the president. Okay.
In the context of this poem, the term ensign means a flag or symbol, not the Starfleet rank.
Oh, okay. That makes way more sense. I was like, what?
And that was just me reading the bit from Memory Alpha. So, shall we begin?
That makes perfect sense. We shall.
So, in this episode, the Enterprise is alerted by an alien species called the Sheliak that there is a human colony in their space that they're about to colonize, so the Enterprise needs to get over there and evacuate them. Otherwise, the Sheliak are just going to eradicate them when they get there.
They were very Vogonish.
Quite Vogonish.
With their bureaucracy, yeah.
Yes, they're a very bureaucratic species, and the Federation and the Sheliak have, like, a giant treaty that's, like, War and Peace long.
500,000 words, yeah.
So they're like, well, okay, let's get over there. They can't beam anyone out from the planet because there's like some radiation going on, and also it's like deadly radiation. They're not actually sure how anybody could survive there, so they like have Data take a shuttle down to the planet. They never explain exactly how the colonists survive it. They just mention, oh, we figured out how to deal with the radiation, but that's fine.
Yeah, it was okay to let it go.
But while Picard is dealing with the Shiliak, saying, hey, like, you give us more time to evacuate these people and, like, dealing with all the bureaucracy and stuff, Data's down on the planet trying to convince these colonists that they didn't even know about until they got there.
Data's supposed to be there because he can withstand the radiation.
Correct. That's why.
But I didn't understand how, if it messed with the computers on the ship, why it wasn't messing with Data.
Did they establish that it was messing with the computers on the ship?
It was like messing with the transporters.
Well, it was messing with the transporters, but that's because they had to send the beam through the radiation. That was the issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He said the phasers wouldn't work there.
That's true, because that's another like energy beam that they'd have to send through. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm following now.
Yes. So Data goes and he like tries to tell the colony, yo, hey, the Shiliak are coming and they're going to like wipe you all out if you don't get out of here. And like the leader of the colony, Goshevin, is just like, no, we've built this great city and we're going to protect it. And also, God, the voice for Goshevin, they dubbed it over in the worst possible way. Like
was it a dub? I was trying to figure out why it sounded so bad.
It was a horrible dub. They got a different actor because they weren't satisfied with the voice that the original actor gave, but they didn't get they could have tried a little harder to find somebody who at least matched what he looked like, and it was just awful, and it just every time he talks, it just takes you out of it. And I'm like, he should have just gone with the original voice. I don't care. They went with it because like apparently the original voice just wasn't commanding enough. I think Memory Alpha said he sounded a little too much like John Wayne or something. That doesn't seem, I don't see why that's a problem, but
okay. So he gets down there and then he meets my new favorite Star Trek character, Artie.
Yes, she's like, oh, I love you, you're an android, and I'm kind of autistic and I don't like people, so I'm gonna latch onto you.
Yeah, I mean, my notes say it way up early. Data should marry her. And then they ended up kissing twice. I was so happy.
Data is running into the issue of like he doesn't understand why they aren't listening to him, and he's realizing he's coming up against like the limits of his understanding of how to deal with people. Mm-hmm. And like he even talks to Riker, like look, I don't think I'm the person for the job, and Riker's like, sorry, but like we've got our own issues. We can't send anyone else down there. It's your job. You got to do it. And so he tries a couple different tactics. He tries some reverse psychology, being like, yes, you should stay here and make your valiant stand, and your children will remember your heroic sacrifice for land. And then it was like, what children? Oh, that's right. Your children will be dead too. I guess nobody's going to remember after all.
I loved his delivery of that whole speech, though. It was really good. Yeah, it was like so ham. Yeah.
Yeah. And Goshevin's like, nice try, but I don't buy it. Every time I mention Goshevin, I'm going to read his line just horribly. But then he like starts meeting with people who are like, well, we don't agree with Goshevin. Let's try and convince other people to maybe just develop a rival faction to challenge him. But then Goshevin shows up to the meeting and he zaps Data with an electric cattle prod and
kills him again.
Yeah, Data gets killed a lot in this show.
And he's like, I have been murdered. Okay, yeah, I know, for like the 5th time.
The lady wakes him up. And he's feeling discouraged, and she kisses him, and he's just like, why would you do that? And she's like, I don't know, it seemed like the thing that you needed at the time. And he even goes through, there's multiple meanings for a kiss. Which one was it? And she's like, oh, it was a friendship thing. You looked like you needed it in the moment, when in reality, I think it was probably a little more.
She definitely liked him.
She liked him. It was a little bit more than that. And at the end of the episode, he does reciprocate, but he says, you appeared to need it. But he realizes, okay, all I've been using are words, and actions speak louder than words for humans. So he decides, okay, well, phasers don't work, but if I take something out of my arm and stick it into the phaser, then it'll work.
Yes, so he cannibalizes his own arm.
So then he goes to the town center where they've built their their prize aqueduct, and he stuns a couple of guards there, and then he blows up the aqueduct. And he's just like, this was what one android with a hand phaser could do. The Sheliak, there are hundreds of them, and they will probably just bombard you from orbit.
Which my notes say way early. They're just going to kill you from orbit. Yeah. What is this whole we'll stand against them crap, you know?
And it's at that point that Goshevin realizes, yeah, okay, I better give up. And meanwhile, in space... Meanwhile, in space, Picard has been dealing with the Sheliak, who are very obstinate about, no, we can broker no delay. We are already on our way, and the human infestation cannot be on the planet when we get there. And
Picard did it, though, because he did exactly what he did when they were trapped in the bad novel. He read the whole thing until he found an answer.
That's right. And his answer was, we can request third-party arbitration. And since the requirement for a third-party arbitration, he can name who he wants to arbitrate. He names a species that it has like a 6-month hibernation cycle that they just started, and so they'll have to wait 6 months for them to get over there so that they can arbitrate. It's like, what? We can't wait. And he's like, well, then I guess declare you in abeyance of the treaty. They're like, no, wait. And he hangs up on them, and they call him back, and he takes his sweet time. He goes over.
The best moment in the entire episode was when he goes over to the plaque, and he's like,
the plaque, dusts off the top of the plaque, and he's just like, I'm enjoying this. Then he answers, it's like, okay, fine, you can have your 3 weeks because the Federation, it'll take them 3 weeks to get a ship that can actually bring everyone over.
Right, because I looked up the capacity of the Enterprise. It's 800 and something people, so they weren't getting those 15,000 people on there.
I think it's 1,000 people total, 150 crew and 850 passengers.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, you can't. I mean, you could probably have people double up in crew quarters, but I don't think you could fit 15,000 people on that ship, no.
Even if you put them standing room only, I don't think you could fit 15,000 people.
And also, they had 3 days until the ship got there, and I don't think, even if the Enterprise used all its shuttles, I don't think you'd be able to even reach ship's capacity in that time, shuttling back and forth. It would just... No, you need a better ship... A ship better equipped for that purpose than the Enterprise.
They spent a lot of time showing us that the teleporters weren't working, or transporters weren't working, which I thought was weird.
Yeah, that was another side plot that he had assigned Geordi and Wesley to go work on the transporters to see. He's like, look, we need this as a backup option. And the whole episode, they're just using these test canisters that are transporting them, and they transport back all half melted and everything. And then at the end of the episode, right after Picard has successfully gotten the 3 weeks, Geordi comes on the bridge. He's like, Captain, I can do it. It'll take 15 years and a research team of 100 people, but we can get it done.
And he's like, never mind. Yeah, thanks for all your help.
I feel like at that point that maybe you should probably send your research data to Starfleet HQ and have them just have a team work on that, just in the event in the future somebody else needs to beam through hyperonic radiation.
Because that would never happen again, right? Of course it's going to happen again. Yeah.
Especially because Geordi thinks, well, I think it's doable. If it's doable, then it would be good for Federation starships to be equipped with transporters that can beam through hyperonic radiation. I don't know.
Even if you end up back at that same planet again, because that happens, 500 years from now, maybe the fake Armus people, they really looked like Armus to me, but a little bit evolved, because they had a sheet that they were behind, that they were wiggling behind. Anyway, so in 500 years from now, when the fake Armus people have abandoned that planet, what if we need to go down there because there's a few human survivors still down there or something that we need to go get? Having this information would be good, I agree with you on that. One of the best moments too, I loved the wiping of the plaque, but there was also that point when they're over on celiac. It's not celiac, it's Sheliak, right?
Sheliak, yes.
over on their ship, and then they decide they don't like their offer, so they beam them back to the
bridge.
Thank you. They beam them back to the bridge, and they're like, "Oh, I guess they hang up on us again." Riker says.
And there was even the bookends of the show. The show starts with Data doing a string quartet in 10 forward, and he sees that Picard and Beverly are there, and he's like, you might want to skip to the second performance where somebody else will be on first violin, because the other team, the other members of the quartet have told me that my performance lacks soul. And they're like, well, Data, come on, don't sell yourself short, and also, like, you know, don't undermine, you know, your performance before you even get there, because it could, you know, have people lose faith in your abilities.
Yeah.
Which kind of ties into, you know, Data experiencing doubt with what he's able to accomplish by convincing Goshevin to evacuate the colony. And even at the end of the episode, Picard's listening to a recording of Data's performance, and he's like, oh, Data, it's very good. And Data's like, well, it's not my performance. I base it on these two other violinists. And Picard's like, but you picked those violinists, and they have radically different styles and techniques, and you merged them together. Is there nothing of Data in what I'm hearing? He points out, he's like, no, I think there's a little more to you than you're giving yourself credit for here.
I think that's humans putting human feelings on robots, but that's okay. It reminded me of people like pack bonding with their Roombas. Like, I mean, Data is there and he's really interesting.
Listen, my Roomba's name is Bartholomew, and he's a cute little boy, and I love him.
Bartholomew, that's amazing. I think I knew that, but I had forgotten. So there's two things that came up, speaking of woke things in Star Trek, in this episode. Yep. One is, the exact quote is, things can be replaced, lives cannot.
Yes.
I said that exact quote not knowing I was quoting Data about 500 times during the uprising in 2020, because things can be replaced. People who have been murdered cannot, you know?
Yes.
And so I definitely picked up on those vibes, but I also got a lot of COVID vibes from this episode. Like, Goshevin was out there saying, he said something like, well, 10 in one say there's not even a threat, Data says, because Goshevin's out there teaching them there's nothing going on here, because he's like, oh, there's nothing going on here. And he's like, so 10 out of the 100 I've talked to don't even think there's even a threat.
Yes,
and I was like, oh my God.
Thought.
Yeah, I know. And then at one point, one of the guys says, Goshevin doesn't speak for all of us. And I was like, yeah, not my president. Get it. I'm here with you, you know, like, and I just thought it was so interesting, those parallels between COVID and wokeness and all the stuff that's gone on in the last couple of years, for them to be down there on that thing like, we built this country, so we're going to stay here and nothing can happen to this country. It's too powerful. That was kind of the attitude, you know? And I was like, yeah, well, that's what gets you killed, you know? and I just thought it was really an interesting parallel, both of those things. I was like, and it's so interesting because we talked about the woke episode, or the woke article at the beginning of this episode. And to me, it's so interesting because those things both were very strong. Like, you know, just because you can't see the threat, it's there. I mean, it takes Data a while to figure out. He has to say they're going to nuke you from orbit if you don't do something. But once he says that, then it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should do something. And plus he blows up their aqueducts. So how are they going to, you know, get water? But he kind of like forced their hand a little bit too. But I just saw those parallels, and I was like, because it would be so stupid to just be like, well, we built this, so we're staying here no matter what, even if there's a threat to our livelihood. I was like, yes, that sounds so much like, well, we want to go get our hair cut because it doesn't matter if COVID exists, and I'm not going to wear a mask while I do it either. Why would I wear a mask to protect other people? Like, I don't know. It just really reminded me of the last 2 years.
Yeah. So, did you notice that Wesley only had one line in this episode?
Oh, did he? No, I think I was too busy thinking about how it was such a cool Data episode. What was his line?
He was working with Geordi. He said he wants the impossible, and then Geordi replies, that's the short definition of captain.
Yeah, that was a great line.
But here's the problem. So, when Manda was on the show, like 2 seasons ago, she brought up issues that Will Wheaton had with being scheduled when they didn't have anything for him to do. And he was, that summer, cast for Milos Forman's movie Velmont. and the shooting was scheduled to go into the first week of shooting for TNG, and this was actually the first episode filmed. They filmed Evolution after this one. Okay. Even though Evolution was going to be the first one. And Wesley was like, well, there's nothing for me in that script, so there shouldn't be a scheduling conflict. But then they were like, well, no, actually, Will, we need you to come back in, so you can't do Valmont because we've actually got a very important scene between you and your mother that will, build up your relationship there. And there wasn't a scene. They lied to him. They were just telling him, you can't build your career. You belong to us. So
that's
he couldn't do this movie. He had to drop out, come back for an episode where he had one line that could have been given to O'Brien.
Right, because he was standing right there, wasn't he?
O'Brien's in the episode and he doesn't have any lines.
Yeah.
But like, he's, it's not like O'Brien is a non-speaking extra. He gets lines all over the place. He could have just given it to him. Will Wheaton could go and do a movie and work on his film career more, but no, they're like, no, we don't like that. We don't like you trying to branch away from us. You belong to us. And that's.
Do we know who was leading this charge against Wesley's career, or was it just kind of like a general?
I assume it was Rick Berman.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a big contributor to Will Wheaton leaving the show next season.
They're already kind of like hinting at it, I feel like, because they said something like, well, I get my hours here on the Enterprise, I think in the first episode, but it's not the same experience as being at Starfleet.
They had always written in a very obvious out for his character. And I honestly don't know how they would have handled it had Will not left the show, had he stayed on all 7 seasons. Because, like,
was he just going to be an ensign? Yeah.
Yeah. Were they just going to be like, okay, I guess you don't have to do Starfleet Academy. You've gotten enough experience credits just on the ship that you can bypass that, and you're just part of Starfleet now. And I mean, they do eventually do somewhat of that because Picard decides he's no longer an acting ensign and actually just gives him a field commission to a full ensign, which lasts until he leaves the show. Some. Maybe like half a season later, but at any point, I don't know, if he's got his focus so much on going to the Academy, it does kind of undermine that if their plan was that he would just never go to the Academy and would stay on all 7 seasons.
I don't, maybe they didn't know, because maybe they didn't, for one thing, maybe they didn't know it was going to last as many seasons as it did. But yeah, I can see where like the obvious answer for Wesley is that he's going to leave and go to Starfleet, Plus, he's going to turn into an adult man that wants to do things on his own and not just hang out on a starship with his mom, As Bob Kelso said, I don't know if I'd want to fly through space with my mother. But yeah, I mean, I was happy to see Will. Like, I don't know. I put on Facebook when I was watching the episode, because there was a point right when at the beginning of the first episode when he's interacting with Beverly, where he just looks so happy that she's there, and I was like, yeah, me too, Wesley. But I had that in the back of my mind a little bit, the like kind of mistreatment of Will in the back of my mind a little bit. I had the, shut up Wesley thing in the back of my head. And I can't remember why. I think it was the Nanites episode, and then I didn't even think about him in the second episode, but I had this like, they're kind of treating him bad, like kind of feeling, and it just, so I happened to be thinking about what like the shut up Wesley and the negative way that he was treated, and I had forgotten about them trying to screw with his career, but no wonder he had a rough go of it during all this. You know what I mean? He's also a kid that's developing. My favorite term for teenagers is emerging adults. And it's like, he's still trying to become a human being. The cookie dough is not cooked yet. And he's going through way more stress than I have to go through on a daily basis. It's just, I kind of get it. Like, I kind of get why Will is kind of like distant from Star Trek now. At least that's what it feels like to me.
Well, I mean, he's running the Ready Room, which is the after show for all of Star Trek. It feels like he's very much involved in Star Trek these days, and he's a big Trekkie himself. Like
I keep forgetting about the Ready Room.
Every time I watch the Ready Room, he is so excited to be talking about what he just saw. So like, no, he is a genuine fan. He just had issues with the producers, and I think he actually talked about how he loved playing Wesley Crusher. He just wasn't able to appreciate it at the time.
Right. One of those things you appreciate a little bit when you're older, a little bit more.
I mean, one of Will Wheaton's like big, coming back to prominence, like as a geek icon, was when he was writing a blog where he reviewed every episode of The Next Generation. And I even remember
interesting.
There was an episode, I think next season, where like he gets a holographic message from his dad. And
I'm looking forward to that.
And he described how in the like watching that episode, he was like, they gave me a beautiful scene, and I was an 18-year-old asshole who couldn't care less about what I was doing. I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to go to the beach with my friends, and I just shat all over this beautiful script for me, and I should have done better. And
that's such an adult response.
Yeah, that's always stuck with me. The Will Wheaton looking back at his performances and going, I could have done better. I should have done better.
Right.
But yeah, but
he knew he wasn't into it at the time because they're sabotaging his career. They're kind of writing him weird. We've talked about this at length, but I think last season they did not treat Wesley well. I felt like they just kind of forgot he had this chosen one trope on his back, and just was like, oh, he's just the kid, So I get it. And for me, my most recent interaction with Will Wheaton that isn't we're watching TNG for this podcast has been the reading of Ready Player One. So that was what in my mind was like, well, it feels like he's moved on from Star Trek, but I forgot about the Ready Room, and you've told me about it before, but I just forgot about it.
He loves Star Trek. Actually, it's funny because his wife, Anne, couldn't care less about Star Trek, which honestly probably is the best thing for him. Like, if he's going to get married to somebody, probably best it's not a Trekkie.
I agree. I always find it so weird when people do that. They marry some huge ass fan. Like it's weird to me.
Yeah, that way you ensure that there's no parasociality going on. It's like, no, like she loves me for me, not because I was on a TV show. She doesn't care about the TV show.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's everything for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.